I adore Rebecca Sugar. Like, if I had to go back to middle school and write one of those essays about the person who I respect, they would easily be my first choice. And their newest project, Lonely Magic, was a reminder of exactly what made me fall in love with their work in the first place. Because yes, they deserve their accolades as a talented and accomplished artist, animator, musician, storyteller, director, screenwriter, producer, cool hair, not to mention their humanitarian work, championing queer representation in children's media, and using their platform to raise money for charities like the Trevor Project, the National Bailout, and the Middle Eastern Children's Alliance. But for me, it's Sugar's lyricism, their songwriting, that managed to resonate with me on such a deep level. I'm Just Your Problem hit 14-year-old me like a bolt of lightning, well before Sugar had any of the above listed accolades. So that's what I want to talk about today. What is it about these deceptively simple songs that somehow manage to tug at my heartstrings every time? Today, I'd like to do some analysis of Rebecca Sugar's Lonely Magic to see what we can learn about the way that they weave imagery, symbolism, and narrative to create songs that articulate all the messy, quiet, unexpressed feelings that come with growing up and being an artist. Lonely Magic is a love letter to artists, so this is a love letter to Lonely Magic. Hi, I'm Maru. Welcome back to the channel. Just to clarify what we're doing here today before we get started, you did hear me right. This is a poetry analysis. I am not a music theory person, I don't know scales, and I would have very little to offer if I were to do an analysis of the mixing and the sound textures and the technique. So it's definitely better for all of us that I stay in my lane and stick to what I know. Words. That's what I studied in undergrad and what I spend most of my days thinking about. I think that lyricism can often go underappreciated in music critique. Oftentimes, I feel that we're overly focused on the artist's literal statements, and the conversation of skill doesn't come into the picture until we start to talk about instrumentation, vocal performance, or lyrical wordplay. When what I often appreciate the most about songs is the word picture that they're painting. And while there certainly are talented music critics who factor this kind of stuff in, I don't know, it's just never enough for me. It's especially fun to talk about this stuff when we're working with a true blues singer-songwriter like Rebecca Sugar. The instrumentation, while certainly made by a talented group of musicians, is overall non-intrusive and allows us to really focus on the storytelling and the message that Sugar is trying to get across. One last important clarification I would like to make before we dive into this analysis is that I'll be referring to the narrator, the protagonist, the I of these songs, as the speaker. Generally, this practice is done in poetry analysis because it's not necessarily a safe assumption that the writer is speaking about their own experiences from a first-person point of view. I want to be able to dive into the narrative of Lonely Magic, but I don't want to have to waste time speculating on the personal life of its creator, because doing so would kind of miss the forest for the trees. Like, even if Sugar came out tomorrow and said, "This is a love song is about the time that me and my husband got in a fight over whose turn it was to play Luigi," sure, I might mention that in this analysis, but by overly focusing on the literal circumstances that caused the song to come into being, we're missing the fact that this is a carefully curated piece of art that is being presented in a way so as to be accessible, relatable, and send a message to a wide group of people. I see this really pervasive mindset crop up when we're constantly speculating about which of an artist's songs are about which ex. Like, yeah, we can try and dissect who We Are Never Getting Back Together is about, but realistically, Taylor Swift wrote the breakup song, and you think she's not listening to it after she breaks up with every single one of her exes? That song is way bigger than Barry Keoghan will ever be. Wait, who are we talking about again? Oh, that's right, the speaker protagonist of Rebecca Sugar's album, Lonely Magic. Sorry for the wait, it's finally time to jump on in. So, Lonely Magic is primarily an album about art, which we can draw from the pretty straightforward title. The creative process, especially when you're getting involved with long-term intensive projects, can often be isolating and lonely, but it's also a unique kind of magic that the artist is able to capture and funnel into the act of creation. It's a beautiful and succinct metaphor that sets us up for the themes that we're going to be exploring in this album. Already with this title, we're hitting on one of Sugar's greatest strengths, which is their simplicity. It does not take a genius to crack the meaning of Lonely Magic. And that's kind of the point. If you aren't getting the meaning, then you're missing part of the message. I think the misconception that metaphors are supposed to be complicated and hard to crack kind of stems from the way that we're taught poetry. We're spending our time trying to decode the archaic language of Shakespeare, or getting a good grade by deriving the correct meaning of Robert Frost's The Road Not Taken. You're supposed to feel poetry. It's supposed to resonate with you directly. Lonely Magic is not secretive about the fact that it's about art. The Lonely Magic Angels are described as 3 aspects of the creative process, and 2 of the 3 promotional music videos are primarily focused on the protagonist creating something. The album wants you to figure this out. It wants you to apply the words lonely and magic as descriptors for your art and see where that takes you. It's a framing device, a broad yet deep articulation of what it is that we're talking about that doesn't make you feel dumb or like you need to pull out a thesaurus. To clarify, there's absolutely a time and a place for complex and clever wordplay. Rap in particular being a genre that I really enjoy because of how it lets these elements shine. But when you're going for emotional resonance, simple is direct, and direct is best. Before we get into the tracks, I'd like to make a quick side tangent about the Lonely Magic Angels. Epiphany, Rationale, and Ache. Sugar created a series of shorts explaining what these angels represent, which I highly recommend that you all check out if you haven't seen them yet, but since they aren't going to come up too often in this analysis, I thought I should take the time to explain what I'm drawing in the background. Basically, after hearing about Sugar's concept for the angels, and how they're partially based off of their artist friends, I thought it would be a really fun idea to try and create my own Lonely Magic Angels, incorporating my artist friends and the art that inspires me into their designs. I'm going to make a little write-up about my angels designs on my Tumblr, which I'll link in the description. I'm not the most talented visual artist, but I'd love to see other people making their own Lonely Magic Angels. It's just such a fun and cool idea and not one that I've seen out there yet, so I want to spread it. Alright, it's finally time to get to our song-by-song breakdown, starting with the opening track, Ice Water. And what a perfect place to start, as we're immediately highlighting one of the things that I love the most about Sugar's writing. That is their skillful way of employing imagery to push the story while simultaneously grounding us in the world that the song takes place in. As a reminder to those of you who haven't taken English class in a while, imagery is any time that we're using language to communicate sensory information. Not only describing how something looks, but how it sounds, how it smells, how it tastes. What's the other one? Oh yeah, how it touch. The streets are sun-bleached, the dormitory steps are narrow, the protagonist is swimming in a t-shirt. Even without this gorgeously animated music video, the words that we have here are enough for us to transport ourselves into the chaotic scramble of our speaker as they're trying to get situated in their new home. Our opening lines that juxtapose the living city with our protagonist's waking nerves also do a lot of heavy lifting here. Without even noticing it, we're drawn to compare the internal sensory experience of the protagonist with the chaos and the hustle and bustle of New York. We understand the chaos of the city not as a nuisance or an obstacle that the speaker is tolerating, but as a part of them, part of their lifeblood, something that they're able to take to with joy and enthusiasm because it's reflective of their internal state. The speaker, despite describing the mundane and laborious tasks that come with moving into a new dormitory, is undaunted, their steps springing with promise despite the laborious tasks that they have to complete. This is already setting up one of the more important through lines that is going to carry us through the rest of the album, which is exemplified by the chorus. I don't care what happens to me, I just want art and music and beauty and truth and you. This is an angel's chorus, a divine calling. Thus, physical obstacles and impediments hold no bearing on the artist's desire to pursue their dream. This is evocative of the common artist experience of skipping lunch because you spent all day working on an art piece, or forgetting to sleep because you had to finish recording your video essay. And yeah, it's really easy to plug in your own specific experiences of ignoring the physical world in favor of pursuing something that nobody else could really understand or see until you managed to get it done. And maybe they didn't even appreciate it then, but it's not about that. It was about making it. You just had to get it out. You just had to get it done. This is pure, it's lovely, it's magical, it captures a feeling that is so fun and wonderful and life-affirming to experience. But there's also an underlying ironic tension to this song, which I think is best represented by the titular ice water spilling into the speaker's shoes. It sounds very beautiful and romantic, and it is, but also, like, mildew girl, like frostbite girl. Like, this is not acceptable. I love the use of the word spilling here because typically I would use verbs like soaking or flooding to describe water getting into your shoes. But spilling conjures the image of an unrestricted flow. It's preventable, but we're not doing anything about it, skipping along like it's not our problem. And it's not. This song does a really good job of signposting this tension without it actually dragging us down for even a moment. And that's because of the next thing I want to talk about, which is another major theme explored throughout the album: finding beauty in the unexpected and making meaning in our own unique ways. You might say that staying up all night is unhealthy, or that the country would be the place to go for beauty, but the speaker doesn't care, and they're able to enjoy the unique view that they get to have because they're skilled at appreciating the unique position that they're in the world. There's no longing for a better view for a more balanced or regimented life. They're stopping to smell the roses, whatever that might be. This idea can be seen cropping up again when we talk about the sun-bleached streets and the spilling ice water, which without context you imagine as a beautiful cascade rather than a fungal nightmare. But I also really like how this idea is explored in the second verse. Despite the speaker falling into place, engaging with the system of the art school, they use the margins for drawing and find humor in parts that are supposed to be taken seriously. Absolutely nothing will dim this speaker's light, and their ability to make the best out of the mundane or even the negative is what gives them the strength to power through all of these obstacles. That, and they maybe have some self-worth issues. They don't care what happens to them, they just care about the things that make them excited, that pull them forward. Which can seem like a bit of a riddle, but is also really relatable and the experience of a lot of people. The fact that the speaker still has selfish wants and desires that they're pursuing show that it's not that they necessarily hate themselves, but their priorities might be a little bit shuffled around. They place so much importance on their calling, on the art, on their big dreams that they forget to take care of themselves. So, despite the positivity and optimism that is exemplified by this song, we've already set up the downfall and character arc that our speaker is going to go on throughout this album, which I am eager to get to. But before we do, I want to bring up one last through line that we're going to see throughout this album. That is the day-night cycle that we're going to follow. It's actually surprisingly central to the album and holds through most of its songs. And as you might predict for the first song in an album, this is the break of dawn, the morning. Our first two lines introduce the sun and awaking, and our chorus concludes at the break of dawn. It's a bright, shiny day full of potential and possibilities, so let's see where that's going to take us. Next up, we have Figure It All Out Together, an immediate must-have for any wedding playlist, as Sugar's voice is so haunting and beautiful and just brings a tear to my eye every time. That said, we won't spend too much time on this song as it is the shortest lyrically speaking, but there's still definitely some fun stuff to unpack here. The use of future tense throughout the song creates the feeling of a prophecy or some type of fated meeting, which, aided by the mention of flight, is evocative of that angel chorus of destiny, of something that is higher and bigger than oneself that is driving their actions. Again, it's not complicated, it's really simple, it's something that anyone immediately can understand and relate to, and yet this simple framing does a lot of heavy lifting. In a very lyrically concise song, we don't have to waste any time establishing themes of fate and destiny and angels, and instead we get to focus on the contents of what the speaker is prophesizing. Once again, this is an optimistic song with a darker undertone. However, we're starting to acknowledge that darkness a little bit more than the first song. Rather than continuing to skip forward in an unbroken stride, we're acknowledging the unknown, the unpredictability of our future. Even so, we are reducing it all down to we're gonna figure it all out together. An absolutely lovely, sweet sentiment, but based on what we know about how the rest of this album goes, a potentially short-sighted one. We also continue our progression towards more darkness, as the darker elements of this song aren't just external obstacles that we're choosing to ignore, but seem to be directly caused by our actions. The explosion that we create when we meet might be beautiful, but we will have to come back down to earth and acknowledge the corrosion. Our flight here is less akin to that of a magical, beautiful angel, and is more accurately described by Buzz Lightyear as falling with style. But we'll figure it all out together, right? Our speaker's blind optimism is starting to get a little bit less trustworthy. Lastly, before we move on, I'd like to once again highlight the imagery showing how the speaker finds beauty in the unexpected. In this case, we somewhat seem to be romanticizing erosion and corrosion. And we're also continuing the comparison between the industrial and man-made with Mother Nature. Corrosion implying a chemical explosion, but still somehow being comparable to the ocean crashing with the natural process of erosion. I think the comparison of man-made things and natural processes here serve to highlight that no matter how advanced we get, we're fundamentally not disconnected from nature. And as disconnected as you might feel as a full-time artist living in your cushy 21st century apartment, all of the things that we're going through and experiencing in our lives are as old as the earth themselves. We're not the first people to face anxieties or huge relationship challenges, and we won't be the last. And we've made it to the peak! Hill to Die On is huge, and there's obviously a lot to talk about here. This song marks the album's central conflict coming to a head. When we reach the end of this song, we'll have closed the chapter on the more positive, optimistic, upbeat side of the album. So let's explore how we get to the fall at the end of this remarkable fight song. The best way that I can describe the narrative of Hill to Die On is that it manages to turn the life's journey of an artist into that of a shonen protagonist's battle for glory. We set the scene by addressing the haters. You might call it an obsession, but I call it a calling. Regardless of whether I'm flying or falling, I know that I'm right. The blind confidence and self-belief of the protagonist is on full display here. And as established by the previous two songs, not only are they up to the challenge of this hike, but the journey itself, the climb, is the thing that's thrilling. This song is absolutely jam-packed with imagery, reinforcing a lot of the scenes that were established in Ice Water. I particularly enjoy the lines, "Every bone in my body to the tips of my hair, every part of me's electric with care." I love how we continue to jump inside and outside of the body. We're outside with the sunshine and the peak of the mountain, and we're back inside in the heat of the fever. I don't even know if you could say that humanity being one with nature is a theme of the album at this point. I just think that Sugar is really talented at weaving together these images, these external environments, and allowing them to seamlessly reflect the emotions of a scene. We're also reintroduced to another one of the speaker's keys to success. As in the second verse, we have this sweet exchange, starting with the speaker inspiring and convincing their love to follow them on this climb, and concluding with the speaker being inspired by how their love's bright eyes sparkle. In Figure It All Out Together, we had some doubts about the speaker's blind confidence and whether it could really be trusted. But listening to this song, it seems like they were really cooking with something. Also, for those of you keeping track of the day-night cycles, despite Figure It All Out Together not really containing any references that I could pick up on, in Hill to Die On, the sun is shining, the bright eyes are sparkling, we're in the heat of battle. This is very subtle, but it's consistent with what we find with the rest of the album. We've gone from a bright and optimistic dawn to a scorching, all too bright day. We're laying it all out on the court, everything's visible. This is the most active that we're going to be in the album. Now that we've gone over the themes that were already established by previous songs, let's talk about the Hill to Die On itself, and the central conflict of this album's narrative. That is being so absorbed in your passion, so determined to achieve your goal, that you're willing to do things that come at the cost of your own health. As inspiring and uplifting as the front half of the song is, we've gone from a vague, I don't care what happens to me, to a specific hill to die on. Sugar takes this commonplace phrase and makes us really sit with it. What are you willing to give? What is the value of your life? What is worth giving it all up for? Well, let's talk about a completely random example that Rebecca Sugar just so happened to make a YouTube short about, talking about how this specific experience relates to this song. Yes, I said that I didn't want to go too much into the artist's personal life, but when they're putting stuff out there like this, I think it's certainly fair game for analysis. Rebecca Sugar's Hill to Die On was Garnet. Garnet being a fusion and the relationship between two gems that were in love with each other, specifically two women in a lesbian relationship. Through Steven Universe's run, Sugar and their team gave this couple everything they could. They kissed, they were romantic, they fought, they made up, they had a storybook romance of them falling in love in one of the most beautiful episodes of the show. They had an amazing and iconic love ballad during their reveal in the finale of season 1, and famously they got to have a wedding, which was the aforementioned first gay wedding to ever be shown in children's animation. So if we're talking about Hills to Die On, like, that's a pretty good thing to go all out for. An absolutely worthwhile goal to run yourself into the ground for. Or is it? What's it like at the peak? In the final verse and the climax of this song, Sugar wastes no time in giving us altitude sickness girlies a shout out before our themes can finally have their synthesis. I don't think Hill to Die On is questioning whether it was worthwhile to make this climb. Rather, it's highlighting the toll that this journey has finally taken on the protagonist. They were so fixated on their goal that literally there was no other way that they were ever going to come to terms with the damage that they've been doing to themselves. Ice Water was filled with references to filling the bucket with artistic inspiration, taking in the scenery, stopping to smell the roses, and finding beauty in the unexpected. But now that we're at the peak of the hill, we're too dizzy to even look at the scenery, too tired to even keep our eyes open. We are exhausted. We are absolutely at our limit. The speaker insists that they would do it again, but where they are now, they don't want to die. There it is. They would have died, but they don't want to die. They don't hate themselves, they just love something else so much that they were willing to give themselves up for it. Once again, this part of the song is packed with sensory internal details as to our physical state. I love the time in my life and the air in my lungs being juxtaposed, allowing us to think of the scale of our entire existence as equivalent to the amount of air we have left to make one last push before we need to take another breath. Now that the speaker has reached their goal, their priorities have inevitably shifted. Everything in their body had been pulling them to the peak of the hill, but now everything in their body is telling them that they need to rest. Unfortunately, everything about them is built on the foundation of this drive to reach the peak of the hill, including the relationship with their love. And this relationship is now being questioned. The sparkling eyes are now shut. They can't even see their love anymore. Can this relationship that was built on a shared goal weather this change to prioritizing self-care? Let's take a bit of a darker turn and talk about Beautiful Place. I don't really want to pick favorites with this album, but this is my jam. What can I say? I love drama, I love haunted houses, I love when it gets a little creepy. And as I've established, I'm a big fan of imagery and atmosphere, and this song brings that in boatloads. The opening line, "What a beautiful place to have a fight," stands in direct contrast to the opening lines of Ice Water. The sun-bleached streets there were emphasizing the disorderly, chaotic ugliness that we were alive in spite of. We've gone from being an unstoppable force of joy and optimism, finding beauty in unlikely places, to negativity and despair in somewhere that should be beautiful. This opening verse also introduces the idea of motion and staying in place as a theme in the album. In Ice Water, we were skipping and jumping. In Figure It All Out Together, we were flying and falling. And Hill to Die On was all about the thrilling climb, our battle anime charge to the top. Crossing over the hill and out of sight establishes how we got here. We're in a place that can't even be seen on the other side of the hill, and the threads of red and white left behind by traffic lights in motion are juxtaposed with how we have to observe them stationary from our window. The reference to a weeknight also evoking the idea that we are trapped, we're not able to go where we'd like to. This idea of being stationary is further emphasized by the repetitive, cyclical nature of the next few lines. Even before this verse is repeated, the consistent looping nature of the meter indicates to us a cycle, a schedule, a trap, a spiral. And oh boy, this part of the song is filled with so much imagery. I'm gonna have a field day with it. But sticking with the theme of motion, there's a continuous image painted of everything falling down. The walls splinter and weather away. We sink to our knees, we pull at our hair, and at last, in our dreams, things come crumbling down. All this motion, all this momentum that had been bouncing, that had been springing, flying back up after every fall that we took, climbing up to the peak, everything now is coming down, 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 heavy to a centered place, an inescapable void. Now, let's dig a little bit more into the imagery here. I love the little animals that are described. It feels very Cinderella. On one hand, they could be sweet little animal companions, but you also get the image of like pests and parasites ready to pounce opportunistically on the decay that they've discovered. The animals also contribute to the feeling of loneliness in this song. The fact that these are notable interactions when compared to the lack of communication between the speaker and their love almost feels dehumanizing, evoking the image of a Disney princess with no one but the little critters to keep her company. So let's do a little synthesis and talk about the idea of motion versus staying still as it relates to self-care. At the end of Hill to Die On, the speaker was exhausted. They wanted to take a break. And as well earned as that break was, they had never taken a break up until this point in the album. And as soon as they try, everything falls apart. When it came to their goals and dreams, they were overflowing with words. A divine angel calling animated their every move. But even though they want to scream in this situation, they have no idea to verbalize what they're feeling. Learning how to prioritize and take care of yourself, as well as expressing some of your vulnerable feelings, are skills that a person has to develop just as much as they would have to do with art and music. And while a passion can motivate you and let you put these things on the back burner for a long time, especially in your youth, we all have to come back down to earth eventually. The speaker has an easy time romanticizing movement, finding beauty in the traffic lights, yet their attempts to romanticize their beautiful place feel a lot more forced. They're seeking solutions by trying to find another hill to climb rather than seeing the house as a project that needs to be worked on. They light the stove with a match, finding rough and tumble solutions to try and get by, and feed the neighborhood cat, still trying to seek some sort of beauty and meaning in this new environment. But the only other action that they take in these verses, other than having a little mentee bee, is to let the other person in, doing something that they know will make them vulnerable and potentially hurt them, considering the fight that was referenced earlier in the song, but are seemingly too tired or jaded to care, seemingly taking this action solely to satisfy the desires of their partner. There's a big stuck in the suburbs folding his laundry vibe to this song, and it could certainly be read as a song about a toxic relationship that one needs to escape from, which is what the protagonist does at the end of the song. This totally works, and sometimes when we're having to focus on ourselves, a certain location, job, or partner can end up being more detrimental than they are helpful. And especially considering the actions of this partner that we're going to get to in the next song, this truly may not be the one for our protagonist. But even though that's the reading I had the first time I listened to the song, I think it might be a little bit too shallow. Even though the speaker is left wondering at the end of the song if they'll ever come back to this place, I'm left wondering if they're ever really going to be able to find happiness anywhere else. If the place that they've built is a metaphor for themselves rather than a relationship, it seems like their conclusion to leave it behind is maybe not the wisest. Although they certainly deserve to go out every once in a while and clear their head. Gotta keep bringing up the day-night cycle because it doesn't really fit in anywhere else and keeps interrupting my flow. We have explicit time mentions with weeknight, the end of the day, and night when you're having dreams. And our references to light come in traffic glittering, simultaneously telling us that it's dark outside and also associating light with the thing that we're losing alongside motion. The place that we're staying in is dark, lighting the stove with a match being only a temporary solution. Alright, so I've certainly kept you in tension for long enough. It's about time that we got to the angst, to the edginess. This Is a Love Song took a lot of people by surprise when the album first came out. However, in hindsight, Sugar has definitely been involved in the creation of a lot of angsty, edgy songs throughout their career. But they're always giving such peace and love vibes that I think I subconsciously attributed them to their collaborators more than themselves. Evidently, though, rebellious rock is a natural fit for them, and I am so here for it. We set the scene for this song with us writing a letter that we won't send. Potentially a continuation of the communication breakdown that was happening in Beautiful Place. And immediately signaling that this is a song for those of us who like to stew in agony, trying to figure out the perfect words that are going to give us closure on a relationship that we already decided to leave anyway. AKA me, this next couple of songs are a targeted attack. They really start to twist the knife in the next couple of lines, talking about how they are taking all the credit for the failure of the relationship because it's too hard to admit what they really needed out of it. Followed by a heartbreaking apology where they take all the blame for even attempting to continue the relationship rather than just giving up. This is heartbreakingly common in victims of abusive relationships. You're so used to putting yourself down and making yourself smaller for the other person's sake that denying your own feelings becomes a compulsive need that you have to fulfill. Acknowledging the hurt is actually the more painful alternative, while in the same stroke continuing to extend that leeway that you give to the other person, because reckoning with their agency makes it sting all the worse. This Is a Love Song is a very mature, nuanced take on breaking out of an unhealthy relationship, and it takes a risk in portraying the victim of the relationship as flawed. However, before we dive deeper into the nuances of that portrayal, let's take a look at the portrayal of our abuser in this song and some of the red flags that crop up. So there are 2 lines where this person's behavior really sticks out as not okay. One obviously being, keep your hands to yourself, that's not okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. And the other being that they refer to the speaker as stupid. Which, rule of thumb, if a partner or a friend is calling you that unironically, it's never a good sign. However, these explicit boundary violations are paired with some descriptions that could be seen as projection on the speaker's part. The section about "you knew I needed a friend, you swept right in, you saw me sink to the floor, I saw you grin" really paint the image of an evil mastermind who was capable of reading their victim's mind. They knew what the speaker needed, they knew how to take advantage of that need, and they knew exactly how what they were doing was making them feel emotionally. And they specifically took sadistic joy in that aspect. Now, I could be wrong in labeling this as projection. Trust me, honey, I know that there are people like this in real life. But for a song that is interested in tackling and engaging with this dynamic in nuanced depth, while also acknowledging that later on we're going to get pretty heavy-handed to make sure we understand that we're dealing with an unreliable narrator, it's definitely fair to question the version of events that is being portrayed by the speaker. Speaking of being a little bit more deliberate and heavy-handed, we get to our chorus, which I adore because we've got sarcasm, we've got barbs, the claws are out. However, the truthfulness of our 2 statements in this chorus become flipped as we get deeper into the song. We're celebrating how the pull they had on us is gone when evidently the fact that we're even singing this song means that the pull they had is very much still at play. And we were sarcastically calling it a love song, but it seems like it's actually a love song. This song almost serves as a commentary on the entire genre of what I would like to dub drop hymn songs, or breakup songs that tend to veer into the more vindictive or black and white type of thinking. Now, I would make the case that that type of song absolutely deserves to exist, and if anything should be protected. We all have our vices, and you will pry if we are never getting back together from my cold, dead hands. But I don't think this commentary is outright condemnation. If anything, This Is a Love Song absolutely falls within this genre. It's just putting it out there in a messier, more mature way that might be better suited to sparking reflection after the dust has settled on whatever relationship you just got out of. Side note, I'm thankful that this song is pretty general and not specifically about romantic breakups. Shout out friendship breakups, baby, they don't get easier. So I've kind of been beating around the bush when it comes to the nuance of this song, so let me go ahead and just say it. This Is a Love Song is walking the messy line of self-reflection when you are the victim in any sort of toxic, abusive relationship. The flaws being referenced here are the messy truths. That as horrible as the other person might have been in mistreating us, and as necessary as recognizing that mistreatment for what it is might have been in getting us to remove ourselves from the situation and finally move on, oftentimes it's some sort of flaw, some shortcoming, some lack that we have within ourselves that we were seeking to fill within this relationship. Something about our own psychology that allowed us to turn on the blinders and accept treatment that never should have been okay. Or even scarier yet, simply being in this relationship might have warped our values, our self-worth in such a way that even if we thought we were fine before, the abuser has managed to create a hole shaped like themselves within our hearts. A need, a hunger that, if not reflected on and dealt with, will continue to repeat in our relationships. In context, this song isn't victim blaming, it's victim empowering, asking us to reflect on the tough questions that will ultimately lead to our growth, on why we just aren't able to shake the pull that that person had on us. I know that I was a little light on imagery analysis when it comes to this song, which is because it's probably the lightest on imagery of the whole album. Beyond writing a letter, the image of sinking to the floor as the other person sweeps in and looms over you, we're kind of all over the place, a mess, in a way that I think is really fitting for what the song is in the album. We've been building up this whole time for a huge crash out, and now that it's finally here, we're bouncing between rage and sadness, completely blinded to our surroundings. This song also has zero reference to any time of day or light-based motifs, but based on context from the other song's placements, it would most likely take place in the middle of the night, something that is heavily reinforced by the music video, which depicts the full drunken 3 a.m. crash out that the lyrics weren't able to carry for us. Based on the time, I also like the idea of associating the lack of imagery with almost a dream state. This song is taking place entirely within our head, outside of the reality that we've gotten used to with the other songs. In the scope of our larger album narrative, this song is finally the payoff to all the angst and tension that we've been building up throughout the album. Hopefully I've done a good enough job of highlighting the red flags that have popped up until this point, so that you understand that this is a person who does not know how to take care of themselves. And as much as this is a song about them lamenting their failed relationship, it also feels like a reckoning, a coming to terms with their own inadequacies. Lamenting rather than celebrating their own naivete and short-sightedness, apologizing for the same one-track mind that was able to guide them to success in the earlier parts of the album. So I mentioned how A Beautiful Place is probably my favorite song on the album, and how This Is a Love Song felt like a personal attack and call out. Praise is like that secret pressure point for my tear ducts. A real punch to the stomach, this one. Thank you very much, Queen. The intro to this song is ruinous. We're being more explicit about the negotiation that was going on in the previous song. The anger has subsided and given way to sorrow. We invested so much into this person, but unlike we'd hoped, they never actually needed us. Like, surely they've become so dependent on our kindness that they're gonna beg us to stay, right? Surely after all those manipulation tactics, when we finally stood up for ourselves, they would get real and raw and honest about how much we were needed. Unfortunately, that's rarely the case. Instead, they're doing the exact same thing that drove us to insanity back in Beautiful Place and staying silent. So we're left with no other choice but to move on. So imagery is back and she's beautiful. We're back on our climb. We're back on the road up the mountain. However, everything is slower this time. We're not flying, we're not falling, we're not skipping, we're walking, stopping to rest on the way. We know how long this journey might take and we're giving ourselves time to do it right. Or are we just hesitating, confused, having our world turned upside down, having lived with the pain that we went through in order to achieve something great before? But moving at a slower pace gives us time to think. As the sun hits the canyon and we walk through the morning haze. We've started another day just like in ice water, but things couldn't be more different. Will I ever not be hungry for praise is, first of all, a crazy thing to put in a song. I really needed a warning before getting to this one. But all that necessary reflection that I was talking about in the previous song is finally happening for our speaker. They are questioning their motivations, wondering how, if it's even possible to change, if this hunger that feels so natural to them will ever be satisfied. I love, once again, the internal sensory descriptions of our desires. Will I ever not be hungry for food? No. So that isn't exactly an optimistic metaphor. I really love the open-ended nature of this song. There's no twist where the speaker starts going to the gym 3 times a week, eliminating grains or gluten or whatever, or even going to therapy. While there could be great songs about all of those things, I think lingering on the uncertainty and the slowness of taking those first steps towards recovery is honestly the most practically helpful and comforting and supportive thing you can do for the greatest number of people. Everyone's self-help journey is gonna look different, but asking these types of questions is definitely the first step. And you know what? Maybe praise is a hunger. Maybe it's something that we'll never quite rid ourselves of. That doesn't mean that we can't start to recognize the red flags of people who are going to use that desire for praise against us. And oftentimes, recognizing and being able to name our internal desires for what they are is what allows us to situationally deny ourselves those desires rather than being blindly led around by them. I don't know, that's just what this song makes me think about, but I think it's time we wrap things up here with our final track. So, Sugar chooses to cap off this roller coaster of an album with Love the Way It Feels, a song that they initially performed as their commencement speech for the Maine College of Art and Design. I love that they retained the introduction, keeping the scene setting of a commencement speech, as they recognize their position as an accomplished artist, someone who is idolized and respected by many, making an album about art, that a lot of people are going to be looking to them for advice. I also love them so humbly and politely introducing themselves in contrast to the fame and glory that they saw in Hill to Die On. Later expanding on this, talking about how they feel foolish handing out advice and how this is a daily struggle for them. Being more open and honest about their difficulty in finding will and inspiration to create great art. Something completely absent in songs like Ice Water and Hill to Die On, but upon reflection must have been present the entire time. Yet another internal struggle that was papered over in the name of passion. Also referencing self-care when they refer to our responsibility being to tend to the fire as it's burning low. On to the central message of the song, Love the Way It Feels is kind of a song about ice water, or Hill to Die On, but I guess I like Ice Water better, so I'm just going to talk about that one. Ice Water was a song about this feeling, about capturing the joy and excitement that comes with the spark of creation. And even though this joy might have blinded and misled our protagonists at some points, the important thing, the thing that's going to bring them happiness at the end of the day, is maybe less to do with the hill to die on or external success, and is more to do with those waking nerves. The feeling, the joy of creation. Even when it isn't easy, draws a line between the love of the feeling and the external success, further emphasized by two contrasting images that I absolutely adore. One being sand whipping and scattering across an unstable surface, exposed, out in the open, and outside of our control, while the other is a deep well, something that is within us, something that collects important things. It is a great Herculean task to remove something from a well. And with a grain of sand, it may as well be impossible. I love this image because it puts gravity on our side. Our sources of inspiration, the things that we collect, they all inevitably fall into us. We are great and powerful and timeless, despite seemingly small, narrow, insignificant on the surface. Through simply existing, we are building something greater than the shifting sands of industry could even dream of. In those final lines, as you gain your mastery, never lose your sense of play. This is supposed to be fun. This whole album, this whole cycle with all the ups and downs, it's all part of life and it's all part of the creative process. We don't want to lose our optimism, our ability to love, to have dreams, to hurt, to lash out, to reflect on all the chaos, and then plunge right back in. There are no secret cheat codes to a pain-free life. Perfection is unattainable. And while recognizing our patterns and growing from them can take us to better places, after we've had our rest, it's time to get moving again. As Where's Waldo once said, it's not the destination, it's the journey. So let's love the journey. Lonely Magic is a story about passion. It's a coming-of-age journey of an artist going through the highs and lows that come with their chosen life path. And I think you already knew that. But what I really want you to take away from this video is why you know that. How, even without dwelling too much on the message, sitting with the lyrics for too long, you were able to parse some of the deeper meanings of this album. By giving each of the songs such a strong emotional core, while simultaneously having a good understanding of what the larger narrative that they want to paint is, Sugar is able to guide us on this journey while leaving a lot up to interpretation. And through repeated themes, thoughtful use of meter, and cleverly constructed imagery and metaphors, Sugar is able to speak to even the most casual of listeners. That's not an easy feat. But it's one that they're able to replicate again and again, and is the reason why, no matter what I'm going through in life, there always seems to be a Rebecca Sugar song that fits my situation. Thank you all so much for watching this video. It definitely got a lot longer than I anticipated, but I figured if I was going to do this breakdown, I wanted to really go for it. I think I really resonated with this album, in large part due to the fact that it's come to me at a time in my life where I'm really trying to pursue my artistic interests more seriously. Video essays being one of those outlets, which really allow me to express all of the thoughts that I'm constantly having about the art that I consume. I'm not really sure if there's a whole lot of crossover audience for this video and my previous two topics, but if you're a Steven Universe fan, know that I will be making a lot more content related to that series, especially with Lars of the Stars on the horizon. I definitely plan on doing more song breakdowns or character analyses as we lead up to the new series. If you're interested in anime or K-pop demon hunters, then check out my other video essays. Or you can check out the Nobody Leaves podcast. I do a new cosplay every week and force my straight co-host to watch whatever gay media I happen to be into at the time. We have an episode covering Has Been Hotel coming out Friday, and a whole back catalog to explore if you're interested. I've been Maru. Leave me an angel wing in the comments if you made it to the end of this video. And I think it's about time that I go outside. See you next time.